8 mice entered a world where survival had been solved. 4 males, 4 females. Food never ran out. Water was always available. There were no predators, no disease, no harsh weather, and no need to compete for basic resources. It was supposed to be paradise. Less than 5 years later, every mouse was dead. Not because of poison, not because of infection, not because of starvation. The colony collapsed for a reason no medical test could easily name. This was Universe 25. In 1968, American researcher John Calhoun built a carefully controlled environment for mice. The temperature stayed stable, nesting material was always available, the enclosure was cleaned regularly, food hoppers stayed full, and water bottles never emptied. Calhoun had spent years studying one question: what happens to a society when survival becomes too easy? Universe 25 was not his first attempt. He had already created many earlier colonies using rats and mice in different environments. Again and again, he saw a similar pattern. The population grew quickly. Then social behavior became unstable. Aggression increased. Mating behavior changed. Family structures weakened. Eventually, reproduction collapsed and the colony disappeared. Universe 25 was meant to be the cleanest version yet. The enclosure was large enough to hold thousands of mice. Small living spaces were stacked along the walls and connected through tunnels and ramps. On the first day, Calhoun released 8 healthy mice into the enclosure. For more than 100 days, very little happened. They explored. They established territory. They learned where to sleep and feed. Then the first litters arrived. From that point, the population began doubling roughly every 55 days. By around day 315, more than 600 mice were living inside. The enclosure still had food. It still had water. Technically, there was still space, but socially, something had changed. In nature, when a mouse colony becomes crowded, younger animals can leave. They travel into new territory and establish new lives somewhere else. Inside Universe 25, there was nowhere else to go. Young males who could not find territory or a clear social position began gathering in the center. They did almost nothing. They had no territory to protect, no social position to earn, no meaningful competition. Some became strangely passive. When attacked, they often refused to fight back. They simply endured the aggression, moved away, and returned to lying around. But another group moved in the opposite direction. These males became unusually aggressive and chaotic. They invaded nests, ignored normal mating rituals, provoked other males, moved through the enclosure with no stable pattern. The same environment was producing two extremes. Some mice withdrew completely. Others became hyperactive and violent. And the females began changing too. Some climbed into the highest nesting areas and isolated themselves. They stopped interacting with males. Many stopped reproducing. The colony had everything required to keep a body alive, but it was beginning to lose the structure required to keep a society functioning. Calhoun noticed another strange behavior inside Universe 25. Even though food was available everywhere, the mice began crowding around only a few feeding areas. They seemed increasingly uncomfortable eating alone. Some feeders became packed with animals, while others remained almost untouched. The physical resources were evenly distributed. The social behavior was not. Calhoun described patterns like this as part of what he called a behavioral sink. As crowding increased, normal social rules began breaking down. Then parenting started to collapse. Male mice that had once defended territories became exhausted or disengaged. That left mothers protecting nests by themselves while also trying to care for newborns. Many could not manage both. Some abandoned their pups. Others moved them repeatedly and lost track of them. Some became aggressive toward their own young. In the worst areas of the colony, infant survival dropped dramatically. The animals were still physically surrounded by abundance, yet the systems required to raise the next generation were disappearing. The young mice that survived grew up inside this broken environment. They had almost no stable model of adult behavior, no clear territory to inherit, no reliable parenting structure, no meaningful social role waiting for them. And when they reached adulthood, many behaved differently from any normal mouse population Calhoun had studied. The males did not fight. They did not compete. They did not court females. They showed almost no interest in reproduction. Instead, they ate, slept, and groomed themselves constantly. Their bodies looked unusually clean because they never fought and rarely interacted. Calhoun called them the beautiful ones. From the outside, they looked healthy. Their fur was perfect. They were well fed. They were physically safe. But socially, they had almost disappeared. They avoided mating, avoided conflict, avoided responsibility, avoided almost every behavior required for the colony to continue. Eventually, Universe 25 reached its maximum population of roughly 2,200 mice. Then growth stopped. Birth rates fell. The colony began aging. The isolated females remained alone. The beautiful ones continued grooming themselves. Violence still appeared in certain areas, but it no longer seemed connected to territory, survival, or reproduction. And eventually, successful mating disappeared. The colony had entered a strange state. There was still food everywhere. There was still water. There was still physical shelter, yet almost nobody seemed capable of creating the next generation. One by one, the remaining mice aged and died. No younger population replaced them. Calhoun described the collapse as happening in two stages. First came a kind of social death. The behaviors that gave the colony continuity vanished. Then, much later, came physical death. That distinction matters, because when people first heard about Universe 25, many took away a simple lesson. Comfort destroys societies. Too much abundance makes living things weak. Remove struggle, and everything eventually collapses. The image of perfectly groomed mice quietly moving toward extinction became a powerful symbol. People used it to talk about cities, modern life, wealth, morality, politics, and social decline. But that simplified version missed what Calhoun was actually trying to understand. The real problem was not simply that life had become comfortable. Something deeper had disappeared. The colony was running out of meaningful places for individuals to belong. Calhoun believed the collapse of Universe 25 was connected to social roles. As the population grew, more mice were born into a colony where nearly every meaningful position already seemed occupied. There were only so many territories to defend, only so many stable family structures, only so many places within the social order. When the number of animals exceeded the number of useful roles available, many no longer knew how to participate. Some responded with violence. Some withdrew. Some stopped reproducing. Some simply existed without engaging in anything beyond eating, sleeping, and grooming. The resources never disappeared, meaning did. That changes the entire lesson of Universe 25. The food did not kill them. The water did not kill them. Safety itself did not kill them. The deeper problem was that abundance removed certain pressures while the society failed to create new ways for individuals to matter. The young males had nowhere to establish themselves. The mothers were left carrying responsibilities without enough social support. The next generation grew up without a clear model of what adulthood was supposed to look like. Eventually, participation in the colony itself began to collapse. And this is where the experiment becomes uncomfortable for humans. Because Calhoun did not believe humanity was automatically doomed to repeat what happened to the mice. He spent years trying to understand how collapse might be prevented. He continued changing environments and studying social structures. His goal was not simply to prove that paradise becomes hell. He wanted to know what a functioning society needs beyond food, water, and shelter. One of his ideas was that when physical space becomes limited, intelligent beings must expand into another kind of space. Conceptual space. Ideas. New roles. New forms of cooperation. New responsibilities. New things worth building. He used the phrase ideational generativity for this idea. The wording sounds complicated. The meaning is simple. A society survives by continuing to create reasons for people to participate in it. That may be the most important part of Universe 25. A perfect environment on paper is not necessarily a meaningful one. You can remove hunger, remove danger, remove physical scarcity, and still fail to answer one basic question. What am I needed for? The mice could not invent new answers. Humans can. We can build new communities, create new work, teach, make art, solve problems, raise families, discover things, care for other people, create roles that did not exist before. That does not mean Universe 25 predicts the future of humanity. Mice are not humans, and a laboratory enclosure is not a civilization. But the experiment still leaves behind a powerful question. If a society becomes extremely good at keeping people alive, does it also know how to give them something worth living for? 8 mice entered a world where everything necessary for survival was guaranteed. Years later, the colony was gone. Nothing poisoned them. Nothing hunted them. Nothing starved them. The system simply stopped producing individuals who could keep the society going. This is Vesper. The mice had no way to redesign their world. We do. And whatever happens next depends on whether we use that ability.